Additional Philosophes, the additional Enlightenment philosophers. So these are a few more Enlightenment thinkers one ought not neglect. So these are not political thinkers, such as Locke, Hobbes, Voltaire, Rousseau, Montesquieu, etc., nor are these gentlemen reformers like Wilberforce or Rousseau or people like that, or Wollstonecraft. These individuals, though, are still thinkers of the Enlightenment, and many of them are Frenchmen. So expect to see more French names on this list. So we're going to go into them. So there are a few Englishmen and one German in here as well. So the first thing we got to talk about is there's a special sect of Enlightenment philosophers called physiocrats. And what they are is they believe the only form of wealth that a government should tax is land. They believe that economic transactions, just like politics and physics, obeyed certain natural laws. They thought just as how Sir Isaac Newton thought there were certain natural laws that governed how objects moved, and how Locke thought there were certain natural laws and rights that affected how government worked and for what purpose government should exist. The physiocrats believed there were certain laws which determined the way the economy was supposed to work. And they also believed because of that there should be little or no government intervention. Let the natural laws that govern the economic world sort themselves out. Now their critics referred to them as laissez-faire economists, and laissez-faire means hands-off in French. So they're hands-off economists, economists that want the government to intervene very little, if at all, in the economy. Let business people do what they need to do. So one of the most famous physiocrats is Adam Smith, and he published a book in 1776 called Wealth of Nations, and in it he makes several arguments about how he thinks wealth is acquired and how he thinks economics is supposed to work. Now, we won't go into Adam Smith's theories because this is not economics. Any of you who may have me later in the year for economics, we will go into much greater depth about Adam Smith's theory, since he is the father of capitalism. However, one major idea besides his economics was governed by natural laws and there should be no government intervention. That's the basic physiocrat stuff. Now, he explains that how society is going to be taken care of is based on what people like to call invisible hand theory. This does not mean that he thought there was some invisible hand that was protecting the economy. No. What he thought was that each individual acting in his own self-interest will ultimately bring about the best outcome for society. How does that work? Well, let's think about this. So, how many times have you walked into a grocery store? You walk into, say, the meat section. You come on a piece of steak. It's a piece of steak. And lo and behold, it's marked down 75%. 3/4 of the price has been taken off. You're shocked. Oh, goody. Steak tonight. And you look down and you notice the expiration date. It either expires that same day or tomorrow. Why? So what's going on here? Well, what it is that each individual is acting out of their own self-interest. Now, you're not going to... Now, the store did not mark this off simply because they want people who normally wouldn't have enough money to buy a steak, or would normally think a steak is just a little too expensive, a type of meat to buy to have steak. No, they're not doing it out of the goodness of their hearts. They're doing it because the meat expires tomorrow, and it's better for them to get something for it than nothing. Now, on the other end of the spectrum, you've got you, the consumer. Now, you're not looking at the store and going, oh, poor supermarket, those poor guys. They bought more steak than they could sell. I'm going to be a nice person, and I'll take some of it off their hands for them. No. You're thinking, I could really go for a steak right about now. And lo and behold, they've marked it down so it's a much easier purchase now. Now notice, you both have mutually benefited. The store got something for a piece of meat that within a day they would have gotten nothing for. And you as the individual got to buy a piece of meat, eat a piece of meat that normally would be out of your purchasing power. That right there, according to Adam Smith, is invisible hand theory of progress. Each of you, acting out of your own self-interest, what's good for you, are bringing about something that is mutually beneficial for the both. Now, Smith had a few disciples, a few followers, a few men that looked at his new theory of capitalism and were enthused. And one man who was particularly enthusiastic about a world of very little government intervention and the cold, hard reality of economics was a physiocrat and Anglican minister named Thomas Malthus. Now, Malthus theorized, he came up with a theory that population would increase geometrically, that is, exponentially. So, those of you who haven't seen exponents, I'm going to go over a little bit more. Basically, it means things are going to go faster. So, think of it like it's going to increase much more rapidly. On a graph, you have a curve, a parabola curve. Now, agricultural production, that's the amount of food grown on farms, is subject to the law of diminishing marginal returns. That is to say that the population, the agricultural graph, is that it's going to decrease. Let me explain how this works. It's going to eventually plateau off. It's going to happen in the food production. Now, the result, the population of the world would outgrow the world's food supply, leading to famine unless measures were taken to slow population growth. Now, Thomas Malthus believed this would be abstinence, sexual abstinence. People would have less kids. Later Malthusian theorists would expand upon the idea, instead searching for contraception or forced sterilization or forced abortion as a method of enforcing this in later centuries. So let's explain the law of diminishing marginal returns. So Malthus believed that at that point in the world, in the late 1700s, the most fertile land, the land that is best suited to growing food on it, was already under cultivation. So we're already using the best land to grow our food on. Now, when more food is required, because the population is just going to keep growing, we, in turn, are going to go out and we're going to take less suitable land, because that's all that's left, and we're going to also bring that under cultivation. We're going to also be using that for farming. But because it's less suitable land, that is not going to produce food. So in other words, let's just say an acre of really good land, right? An acre of really good land maybe produces, let's make up a number here, 50 bushels of wheat on a good acre. Now, let's say so if I've got 10 acres, I'm going to get 500 bushels. Now, let's say an inferior acre of land less suitable for farming, let's say instead of making growing 50 bushels, it only grows 20 bushels. So now, instead of that acreage, instead of being able to grow 500 bushels on 10 acres, like you previously were, now to grow an additional 500 bushels, you're actually going to need 25 acres to grow that same volume of food, to produce that extra 500 bushels of wheat. And so he says eventually going to happen is it's just going to peter off. You're going to get to the point where you're bringing more and more land under cultivation, but it's just such terrible land, you're not going to be able to grow really any extra food on it. And so eventually he says we're just going to get to a point where we can't grow any more food. but the population is going to increase past that point, Malthus says. And that's when you reach a crisis. So see, food is going to go up like this. It's going to keep going, and then it's going to curve off. But the population is going to grow past it. Once it goes past it, you get what they call a Malthusian catastrophe, meaning that once the population outgrows the food supply, you're not going to have enough food for the people, and so there's going to be a catastrophe. There's going to be war, there's going to be famine, people are not going to be able to eat. And that's going to continue, Malthus believed, until the population dipped down again to a point where it was below what the food could provide. So that's Malthus's theory. Now, why did this Malthusian catastrophe never occur? Well, one major reason turns out to be that Malthus suffered from two problems. One, incomplete knowledge. Malthus was actually wrong. The most arable land had not been put under cultivation. In fact, there was a huge volume, hundreds of acres of fantastic land that was basically being sat on at that very moment by the French and the Spanish in the Louisiana Territory, aka the Great Plains, which no one was farming on in this point in history. And once that land was brought under cultivation, it provided an immense volume of additional food for the world's population. The other thing is that the population actually did curve itself, but not from Malthusian things. And we're going to go into, I might get into demographic transition theory with you, I might not. If I don't get into it with your class, I will definitely get into it with my economics class. So those of you who will have me for economics, I will definitely go over demographic transition theory with you, if I do not already go over it with this class. So, let's focus on some non-physiocrats for a while. So, René Descartes. Now, I am not going to expect you to actually be able to go into full details about Cartesian dualism, but I want you to just kind of be aware of René Descartes and his existence. Now, René Descartes was also dabbled in mathematics a little bit. We're not going to deal with his issue with imaginary numbers or anything like that. We're not going to deal with that right now. Mr. Turner wants to go into that with you. That's his business. I'm not going to be going over it with you today. He can probably explain to you a lot better than I can what Descartes got right and what Descartes got wrong on mathematics. What I'm here to talk about is Cartesian dualism. So, Descartes eventually came to recognize a divide between what he called the body and the soul, what we now call the mind-brain divide. That the mental processes that are going on in the brain, at least according to Descartes, and according to many who follow Cartesian dualism, are not reducible simply to all the chemical and electrical reactions occurring within the brain. There is what is mental versus what is in the brain and in the body. Now, Descartes arrived at this interesting proposition, which is, I think, therefore I am. So Descartes was trying to get to the bottom of what could one be certain was real. So Descartes decided to do a little thought experiment. So he said, he imagined for a moment, what if there was some demon or something that was trying to deceive him? Yes, well, could it trick my eyes? Yes, it could. Could it trick my senses? Sure. So we got down to, well, how do I know if my eyes can be tricked? If I can feel things that aren't there, if I can taste things, how do I even know that anything is real? How do I even know I am real? And he eventually came to the one conclusion, what's the one thing that could not be deceived? I think, therefore I am. Because I have a thought going on in my mind, according to Descartes, that is sufficient proof that I exist. That the mental is in many ways more real than the physical. Because my perception of the physical world can be manipulated, right? If you've got problems with your eyes or with the connection between your brain and your eyes, I can see things that aren't there. For anyone who's, I know none of you ever have taken, none of us in this room have personally ever taken a hallucinogen, but those who have can definitely attest. They saw things with their eyes that they would have sworn to you in that moment were there, that were not in fact there. So, but our mind can't be as easily tricked. What we're certain of by logic is not so easy to see. that's where